Well, will the big, beautiful bill be a big, beautiful bust? President Trump is putting pressure on Congress now just ahead of a self-imposed July 4th deadline, even telling members to lock yourself in a room and take no vacation until it's done. But as senators work on changes to the House version of the bill, that July 4th deadline doesn't, well, seem to be much of one now.
It's important. It's not the end all. It can go longer, but we'd like to get it done by that time, if possible. And look, we have a lot of very committed people, and they feel very strongly about a subjects that you're not even thinking about, that are important to Republicans.
Okay, now it doesn't sound like an absolute deadline. Jay O'Brien, what's the deal?
Well, what we've seen from the president just over the last day or so is moving the goalposts up and then back and then up again. What we saw from the president not long ago was telling members of Congress not to leave town, to work through the weekend, members of the House to not leave for their normal July 4th recess week and instead stay on Capitol Hill and work through these various issues and try to pass whatever gets out of the Senate ultimately. And it's still unclear if something will ultimately get out of the Senate. Then you saw those comments that you just played from President Trump earlier today. And then maybe a couple hours after that, he posted again on Truth Social saying he wants this bill on his desk by before the 4th of July, exactly a week from today. Now, Senate Republicans are meeting behind closed doors right now. Actually, that meeting just wrapping up. And the sense we've gotten from the Senate Republicans who've emerged from that meeting is that they believe they may be on track to get a look at a final copy of this bill at some point today, start taking key procedural votes on it tomorrow, and then final passage potentially on Sunday. But that's the sense they got from that meeting. And it remains the same, though, Kira, that there are still key sections of this legislation that are urgently being rewritten because the Senate parliamentarian threw them out, including sections that tackle Medicaid and the provider tax and how that funds various healthcare agencies and rural hospitals and things of that nature. There are other issues at play as well that were tossed out by the parliamentarians, so key sections being rewritten. In the final text of the bill, very much not out yet, despite the fact that Senate Republicans seem to believe they're on track for some kind of a weekend vote.
Well, you caught up with Rand Paul. What do you think? Could Republicans like that stand in the way here?
Look, John Thune can afford to lose 3 Republicans. He only needs 51 votes to clear this out of the Senate. And there are notable Republicans who say they are just not going to vote yes on this. And Rand Paul is probably the top of that list because he says, among other things, it increases the deficit. The last estimate has the deficit increase at about $2.8 trillion, largely because of Trump's tax cuts. Also, he has an issue with the debt ceiling addition into all of this. President Trump has called him and the other Republicans who would vote against this, quote unquote, grandstanders. Here is what the senator said to that. The president has said that those like you who are against the bill in his own party are grandstanders, is the word he used. Are you a grandstander?
I would use the word conservative, fiscally conservative. People have been saying the same thing. You know, I say the same thing whether it's a Republican president or a Democrat president. And really both parties are to blame for this.
And remember here, Kira, ultimately, if and when this gets out of the Senate, Mike Johnson has got to pass it again through a razor-thin House. And we saw the drama in that chamber when they had to get this legislation out of the House the first time. And Johnson would, in theory, be under the gun because if this does get to the House by early next week, again, he's got to pass it by Friday. And that July 4th deadline to correspond with what the president says he wants.
All right. Jay O'Brien on the Hill for us. Jay, thanks.